Athletes and activism has been a thing that has really kind of come back to the forefront. And of course, in back-to-back years, back in the 60s, there were two prominent moments where athletes really took that activism step. You had the 67 Ali Summit after Ali had decided that he would not go to Vietnam after being drafted, and you were a part of that. And then we have the 68 Black Power protests at the Mexico City Olympics in 68, which you actually boycotted. Things seemed to go dormant for a time until faces of the sport like a LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, they decided to start speaking out on these issues after the deaths of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown. What do you think took so long for that to happen?
Well, I think that basically once the achievements of the civil rights movement were realized, people in the black communities were focused on the economic upheaval that had worried all of us. We were a lot more worried about our economic survival than any specific civil or human rights. But once that period got past us, we had to focus on something else that was a lot more divisive. So I think that all of the negative influences in our society, the subtle racism and all of those things, people are becoming more aware of that, and we're not talking about it, so it's becoming more and more of a problem.
When looking at the four major sports, and even college, because it's, networks and all the money that they generate, they're just as big as the pro sports now. It seems like the NFL has the biggest platform and has had the most pushback when it comes to athletes speaking out on these social issues, especially from President Donald Trump. When Colin Kaepernick began his protest in the summer of 2016, were you surprised by it? And what do you think of his current lawsuit with the NFL right now?
Well, I wasn't surprised at all by Colin Kaepernick's protest. All you have to do is watch the film of the killing of Tamir Rice in Cleveland, and you will understand what Colin was talking about. And I think that pushback against him was as severe as it was because he would not stop what he was doing. He would not leave the issue alone because it's an important issue to him. And it's a lot more important than his job was. And he realized that he was risking his job, but he had something important to say, and he said what he had to say. So I have a lot of respect for him for that. I think that he will get a good hearing because the Players Union will represent him well. And it seems to me it's pretty obvious that there was collusion among the owners to keep him from having a job, just because they didn't like his politics. But the way he expressed himself really is the key. He wasn't doing anything to disrupt the game, but he was making people aware of something before the game. And people who did not like that subject being brought up on Sunday morning at an NFL game decided that they would try to stop him by doing what they did. They were effective in stopping him in the short term, but his movement has caught on among the NFL players because all of the black players in the in the NFL have seen some aspect of American racism, and they all have issues that they want to discuss and they want to be fixed. And this is going to continue to have the athletes continue to protest. So I think it's going to be futile for the owners to try to shut the players up, and they're going to have to accept some type of demonstrations by them because they have every right to talk about what's wrong with America. That's the only way that we get to fix it.
You converted to Islam while you were in college, but you officially changed your name from Lou Alcindor to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the summer of '71. Being in a Midwestern city like Milwaukee that was still dealing in the aftermath of some racial tensions in the late 60s and early 70s, and from the time that you were there to when you got traded to the Los Angeles Lakers in '75, were you getting some of that racially charged backlash that athletes are getting today?
I think I was very fortunate to be in Milwaukee because they really didn't have an opinion, and they were going to watch me and see what I was all about. So I was not running around trying to call all white people devils. That is not what Islam is about. That's not what I'm about. Islam is about tolerance, and it's supposed to be about peace, and I tried to live my life that way. So they gave me a little pass to see what I was all about. I wasn't political like Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali eventually became an Orthodox Muslim, and he eventually started to speak about the fact that no, not all white people were devils, not all black people are divine. We have a great admixture of both in every racial identity that you can find, devils and angels, and that's just the human condition. So I think people in Milwaukee realized that and gave me a break, and I didn't let them down.
Has being Muslim in America changed from the 1960s and 1970s to 2018?
Well, I think after 9/11, people started to see Islam as a threat. Basically, what it's all about is if you live in the Middle East and you have aspirations to get married or get a good job, you're screwed. The rulers over there do not build roads and hospitals and universities. They take the money that their countries produce and put it in their pockets. So the mismanagement of their countries have created this enormous amount of anger and frustration among the populations over there, and their leaders tell them that it's our fault, the people here in the West. It's the fault of people in the United States. Well, it's not. But they buy this because in their state, they don't have access to valid information. The only information they get is what they're told by these people who are authoritarian despots. So they end up becoming radicalized and blaming our society for the faults of their society. And that's why they're against Americans and against the West. But this is a very hard thing for some people to understand. I think the only way that we can overcome this for Muslims in America is for every Muslim in America to understand that they have to reach out to people who are not Muslim and let them understand what Islam is really all about. If they can do that, we can change this, and we don't have to have bans on Muslim immigration or anything like that. It's not necessary. Certain things need to be fixed.
I know I'm gonna hand it back over to Sheila real quick, but I'm sure everybody is wondering the same question, and I'm gonna jump on the grenade for everybody and ask it. Do you think we're going to get a fourth straight NBA Finals with the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers? You were all wondering.
Well, I would have to say that Cleveland doesn't look too good this year. LeBron has a very steady career path, and he's still playing at the top level, but the other aspects of the Cleveland franchise seem to be failing at this point with injuries, and they lost a really good player in Kyrie Irving. So I don't think it's going to be Golden State and Cleveland, but I do think it's going to be Golden State and somebody.
Maybe the Boston Celtics.
Could be.
So I just had to get that in there. Go Celtics.
Now back to the serious questions.